So I'm in the neighborhood. Do this first. I'm in the neighborhood in Washington where I grew up in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. I'm going to go by the elementary school in about an hour. Once it's let out, all the kids are gone. I drove past it. But I'm looking at the communal backyard. This was a communal backyard when I was a kid. All of those houses had separate backyards. The same backyard. They hadn't been divided off into separate ones. I know I'm in the right place. It feels a whole lot smaller than it did, but I would cross that backyard in order to walk uphill to go to school. So I drove past my house and I flipped around. Now, this is the house that I lived in when my parents were divorced when I was 7 years old. And this street I remember it a whole lot bigger than it actually is, because of course I was really young. That fence wasn't there because that house right there was open to our house, and there was a dog they had chained up to a tree stump over there. And this was the house. It was a different color. I don't remember that white and blue, I don't think. But I'm pretty positive that's the number. That's where I lived 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. So yeah, I'm in my childhood neighborhood. I think I'll probably have more to say once I've walked around the elementary school a little bit, which I can't do right now because school's still in session. But I've never been back here. Never been back here since my mother moved us to Bakersfield. It's weird. I know what I want to talk about. Shut off the windshield. As I've addressed it in the past that I don't want to sit out in front of somebody's house. I've addressed it in the past that depression has to do with living in the past and anxiety has to do with living in the future. And the present is a gift. Yeah, that's better. I don't know what to say. I know I've never been back to this neighborhood since the age of 10. Most of my history has to do with Bakersfield and moving there at the age of 10. But so much of what I remember that my childhood stems back to has to do with this street that I'm sitting on right now. And it's weird. I don't remember first grade very well. First grade was in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and I'll be in Tennessee several weeks from now. Probably like 6-ish. I don't know. This trip has a weird calendar to it now. But I don't remember the name of the school, so I can't visit it. But I remember both of the schools that I attended here. The 2nd and 3rd grade school, and then the 4th grade school. I'll go to both of those in a little while. And I have vague impressions of neighborhoods growing up in the Bay Area from the age of 1 to 5. I know I went to Noah's Ark preschool. I couldn't name the school that I went to in kindergarten, nor tell you what community it's in. I know I lived in Richmond. I know I lived in Sunnyvale. I know I lived somewhere else. But there were multiple houses before the age of 5. And then my dad was working for Peterbilt, and he got transferred to Tennessee because they had a plant out there. And then he got promoted to PACCAR, which is the parent company of both Peterbilt and Kenworth, or was at the time. And that's here. That's in Seattle. So that's how I ended up here. And then my mom and my dad split. And I don't think I've addressed this very much on on any of this, but I was a latchkey kid for part of that. I know I was a latchkey kid at 7 because I remember walking home to this house. I remember the communal backyard. I remember the curve in this street and the house at the end, because at the time they had an Irish setter, and I remember running across the communal backyard to get to my backyard because that Irish setter wasn't restrained. I remember being afraid of the dog over here, even though it was chained, because it would lunge and bark and was not a very nice dog. But there was no fence there. I think I was a latchkey kid for 2nd and 3rd grade, and then my mom had me move to Stevenson Elementary so that I could walk to daycare. Or get picked up for daycare. I don't remember that. So I'll see if Creative Elves Daycare still exists and probably drive past it. I remember some of the people I went to school with, and I'll talk about that when I'm up there, I suppose. I remember one of the counselors at the daycare. I remember one of the kids I was friends with, and maybe I'll talk about those. But yeah, this is a cleaning house. I might get out of the car and walk up the street. No, it's weird. 6'5" guy in a black coat walking around your neighborhood. It might have to be good enough just to sit here and sit in this place's energy and cleanse that energy and let those moments go. Clear house on them, put them in their boxes and put them away, or put them at a yard sale or donate them to Goodwill. Because as so many have pointed out, this trip is about letting go. I might do that walk to get some footage, because part of the trip is also not giving a fuck. And if somebody calls the police because a tall, dark guy is walking around the neighborhood, well, I'm not doing anything illegal, and I can explain why I'm here. So I do that to myself. Like, what could happen? How could this? And I write these really negative outcomes. Partly because I grew up with horror, and partly because of the traumas of childhood that we all have. I imagine how bad things can go, and what might happen, and I let those lizard brain fear centers warn me off things that aren't necessarily unhealthy for me, which is part of what I got out of, or a good big part of what I got out of the river rafting thing. Yeah, I'm gonna let that be where that is and live in it for a little while. I'll come back in a little while once I go up to the school. Peace. Yep, walked up to the end of the street. Walking back to the car now. I remember playing with cars at the base of a tree, a couple houses down, in the dirt. It's like a sandbox at a neighbor's house. Don't think it was there. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago, so the landscape here has changed significantly. We talked about the fences. I don't know, the same trees are there, tree stumps. Just gonna be here for a minute. So I came up to the school. This is where I went 2nd and 3rd grade, and it's nothing like I remember it. So I went in, I talked to the school secretary. And apparently, and I described the way the school was when I attended it, and I was like, it was a cluster system. She goes, yeah, like a bee's, like a honeycomb. And I went, yeah. And she went, yeah, they tore that down in 2010. Because apparently when they modernize here, they displace the kids somewhere else entirely, and then they tear down the school and build it from the ground up. So the only thing remaining at this school from the time that I was here is that sign, is the sign of the name of the school. They preserved it from one school to the other one. There was one other thing, but I didn't catch what the other woman who was part of the conversation said. So this is where the school was, but the school I attended doesn't exist anymore. So yeah, I was here for 2nd and 3rd grade. My best friend was a kid named Kevin Simmons. I was close friends with a guy named Jeff Stepanian. I remember having a huge crush on a young lady by the name of Leslie Sakamoto. And they would all be my age still. It's not a Kitty Pryde situation where I get older and they don't, which is, good God, I'm weird. It's funny, I think while I drive, and while I'm driving, I think up stuff that I want to talk about. But then when I'm on the site, being in the moment, those things escape me. I can't remember what I wanted to talk about. It'll come back to me as soon as I get in the car and start driving. Which is why I take so many videos of driving, I suppose. But I think we all have messed up childhoods. I wonder if there's a difference in how people think and what they carry forward. Whether there's a gene or an environmental condition that allows you to remember the positive stuff and let go of the negative stuff, or vice versa, or if there's a level of trauma that gets preserved, or if different people's brains are receptive to different levels of trauma that burns itself into their memory. I don't remember how. I mean, I don't remember any of the context of this, but I remember getting one of those pencils, like a kindergarten or first grade pencil, one of the thick ones that's easier to grip on, but doesn't have an eraser. I remember getting one of those stuck in my ankle, my left ankle. And it wasn't during school, it was like an after school, because I remember being outside the clusters, walking around the school looking for a door that was open, with a pencil sticking out of my ankle. And I've shared my elementary school bully nickname with very few people. My last name being Long and going by the first name Rob. I got called Oblong by a kid named Paul Reinhardt. I remember him. And I remember being diagnosed with amblyopia in 2nd grade. And so I had glasses in 2nd grade. Wore them religiously so I could get rid of them, because somehow my left eye strengthened by 4th grade, and I didn't wear the glasses a whole lot moving forward. Vision catches up with you as you get older, and so my left eye fuzzes a little bit. At some point in the next few years I will probably require glasses to drive, I'm sure, but I'm still making my way through those eye tests. I remember Mr. Jackson, 2nd grade, Ms. Mills, 3rd grade. Mills was split with another teacher by the name of Honeywell. I don't think that was full-time. I think he was like subject-specific. I think it was a 6th grade teacher that came in for computer science or something like that. Did they have that in 1978? I remember the student marketplace where I bought my first issue of Spider-Man. We've discussed that before. That's here at this school. I remember my dad. I remember back to school night where he took the rods which were used to teach basic mathematical concepts. Like there was a long one that was 10 squares, and then there were single squares, and then there were chunks in between that they used to help us learn math. And my dad, for some reason, at a back-to-school night, at least this is the way I remember it, figured out how to do calculus with them. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember why. I don't remember the point of that. I remember him telling me that he had told the teacher that... I'm sure I misremember this in some way. This is also when and where I would have been a part of Cub Scouts. And as a reminder for my own... I mean, all of this eventually becomes fodder for writing. Like, I'll pick a video and watch it and then write a story or something off of it. All of it becomes something. I think I'm moving back towards writing, but the Pine Box Derby story, I don't know if that's the right terminology. It's not the one where you build a go-kart and race downhill. It's the one where you take a block of wood and you carve it. And I remember my dad taking over that project because he's an automotive engineer. He's an automotive engineer, and he was like, he thought he could make the perfect design out of the block of wood, and he did. He carved essentially a Porsche. I don't remember the process. I just remember showing up with that car, and then it finished dead last because I had forgotten to graphite the wheels, which essentially I didn't WD-40 the axles, so the wheels could not spin as fast as the car was capable of going. So I remember my father being somewhat upset about the fact that the car that should have finished first, that he designed, finishing last because I had made a mistake. That's the kind of thing I remember Washington for. And so in the process of laying this to rest, we are a product of our experiences, right? I mean, when my parents were divorced, and I'll use that as the catalyst to write from. I don't need to go into any more detail than that. Like I said, we all have fucked up childhoods in some way. Are some more fucked up than others? Sure. There's a lot of questions roiling in my mind about morality and the tipping point and nature versus nurture and what causes you to become who you become. I just know that in second and third grade, there were a lot of negative experiences for me. And as an adult, yeah, you work to overcome those issues and to move on from them and to grow from them. And hopefully we never stop learning. A lot of us medicate the pain in one way or another, and depending on the severity of the pain, there are different types of medication. Most forms of addiction are some form of medication. I don't know the science on it's a disease thing, but I know most of the people I know who have succumbed to some form of addiction are using it to medicate pain, either past trauma or current environment. And it doesn't matter what kind of addiction. It can be gambling, it could be alcohol, it could be drugs. I know people who have experienced all of those, not individually, I mean separately, different people. And the trick to this is why rehab is weird and why 12-stepping is weird, because you can't just treat the addiction itself. You have to treat the underlying pain or the trauma at the same time. Otherwise, getting rid of the medication just leaves you in pain, which is where relapses happen. At least is my philosophy, my thought on it, and probably where I'll end up writing from at some point. So if you have comments or you want to add criticism or change the way I think about it, feel free. The more I learn, the better it is. We all go through trauma. Hopefully not. Hopefully there's some of us that can escape it. The more of us that can escape it, the better. We all deal with it in our own way. It's hard and painful to heal, to be willing to take on that trauma. It's one of the reasons we have another way of medicating that trauma is antidepressants, medication, anti-anxietants, things like that. But those antidepressants, they're not supposed to, at least in my view, they're not supposed to be a permanent solution unless your brain doesn't do dopamine, in which case they become like insulin and they take over your body's function. They're supposed to give you room to be able to work on the problem. So you can't medicate yourself out of coherence or cognizance of your pain, but you can medicate yourself enough that the pain is manageable so that you can take it in small chunks and work through the individual pieces and then take on a little bit more and a little bit more until you're able to handle that. I've got my own work I'm doing, just like everybody else out there. I've been through my own shit. There's 8 billion stories on the planet, give or take. So coming here is one step in that. Wish I knew where Kevin Simmons or Jeff Stepanian or Leslie Sakamoto were. It'd be nice to say hi. I'm sure there are kids I'm leaving out that didn't burn that impression into my brain. I can't find creative elves. I don't think they exist anymore. Not surprising. It's a daycare 40 years later. I'm going to swing by Stevenson Elementary. They still exist. And tell some 4th grade stories. It's probably just one 4th grade story. And then move on with my evening. Standing here in the rain is good. Going by the house on 37th Street, coming by Ardmore. I remember 2 A's. Maybe my mind has conflated the name of the school with the word Aardvark. I was glad to know that I did remember it correctly, and the building is just not just completely different from the way I remember it. That it's been reconstructed. But the rain is cleansing. You take on as much pain as you can handle. You work through it. You get stronger. You move on. But you have to be strong enough to take it on and recognize what needs to be taken on. We all get through the best we can. We do the best we can with what we have to work with. I firmly believe everybody's doing that. So none of us gets out of it alive. Peace. Oh, it's the radio. Bury the rain, undefined in a second-hand store. Raspberry beret. He wasn't wearing much more. Background music. So I'm outside Stevenson Elementary. That's Stevenson Elementary over there in the distance. I don't know if I can catch the sign. There's a line of cars waiting to pick up, even though the school closed at 3. So I'm assuming there's some kind of after-school program. So rather than get out and film anything, I'm going to sit in my car and do it. This school also doesn't resemble what I remember, but what I remember was a lot more generic school. Flat, one-story kind of thing. I remember Ardmore because it had the clusters, the beehive, honeycomb structure. Stevenson didn't have that, and I'm assuming it's been rebuilt in a similar fashion because we're talking 40 years since I attended for 1 year. I don't remember a lot about Stevenson. I can't tell you who my fourth grade teacher was. What I do remember is that teacher, whoever she happened to be, taught us a lot about the legal system. There was a student marketplace, and like the one I discussed for second and third grade, and I'm pretty sure the Spider-Man was second, third grade. Yeah, I'm positive it was student marketplace over at Ardmore. But there was a similar student marketplace here where you'd get fake money that you'd be able to spend on other people, the stuff people had brought from home. Except one girl in our class opted, her mother photocopied it for her, so she had extra money to spend. At least I think that was the case. That it might not have been the first case, but it was the one that I remember the best. So because there was a, quote, crime committed, something that was unfair to the student marketplace, she took that opportunity to create a student courtroom system. And the class elected me district attorney. So I was responsible for prosecuting every case that came through the system. I don't know how many that was. My brain wants to say it was like 35, but there's no way that's true. The counterfeiting case sticks out in my mind because I remember I only had to ask one question. Because I called her to the stand and went, "Did you do it?" And she went, "Yep." And I went, "Okay, I rest." So I guess we should have learned something about plea bargaining in there somewhere. But I remember in the course of however many cases it was, I only lost 2. And I lost them both to the same person. It was a girl named Nguyen. I think it's Nguyen. And I think that's correct. I think I'm pronouncing that correct and spelling it correctly. And so when I left, because apparently I moved before the end of the year, I made a recommendation that they elect her district attorney, and they did. That's the only thing I remember about fourth grade is that whole legal experience. I think reflecting, maybe that's where I love the law, I love justice, but I don't love the legal system. And I think we all share that to some degree. There's a point where, I've had enough time in court on one thing or another that I learned the hard way that it isn't a justice system, it's a legal system. And the way that it's structured has become, it's problematic because of the overload in the system. There's too many cases. See that? That bugs me. There we go. There's so much, nope, didn't work. There's so much in the legal system that the most precious commodity to the legal system is time. There's no time to deal with all of the cases that come through it. And so they get abbreviated. What's the snapshot that we can do with it to make sure? The concern isn't making sure all parties are treated fairly. The concern isn't finding the truth. The concern isn't justice. The concern is what's the fastest solution that we can reach that fit the facts that we've been presented with. I don't want to delve any deeper than that into my individual experiences with the law. I can say I've been disappointed that there isn't time to look more thoroughly into certain situations. And I've been disappointed whether I was on the winning side or the losing side, that it is so much about who's got the most money to spend, who's got the funding. So corporations choke out lawsuits. I mean, they can tie them up in appeal, keep them in the court system forever. And because they've got so much money, it's tough to get justice in those cases out of the system. There are exceptions, of course, but I mean, that's my experience, and I know it's the experience of some people. You're welcome to argue with me. Give me another perspective. I love other perspectives. If you're not attacking me, if you're not trying to roll over me, then I'm happy to discuss and consider if there's a reasonable discourse. It's based on logic. I've changed my opinion on a lot of things over the years, based on sound arguments that make me go, yeah, that's a good point. I understand that. I wonder how much memory the human brain can hold. Because I know I remember a lot of things I don't need to. I don't want to say crap, because it's all been valuable to me at some point. But some people remember things that I was involved in that I go, I don't remember that at all. But it was a super significant thing to them. And I wonder if you get older, your brain isn't full. And so you start losing stuff, or you have to get rid of stuff so there's room for new memories. And I wonder, I'm fascinated by, I mean, now it's fortuitous that I'm in the Puget Sound area because I'm in Johnny Mnemonic territory. The neuromancer, William Gibson type stuff that deals with couriers storing things in their brain and how much storage you have, although in that case it's an actual cyberpunk construct. And I think part of the point, which ties this all together, is once I write it down, it's easier for me to let go of. Once I record it, it's easier for me to let go of. I've had a lot of situations that pissed me off, spiked my blood pressure, made me worried I was going to have a stroke, either short times or over a long time. And it's always easier to let go of it if I can document it, if I can write it down. So I've done that a lot. I've been trained to do that, it seems like, by my experiences over the years. You'd be surprised what I still have documented for over 10 years ago. Tape's going to stop soon, so I'm going to stop there, and I may pick up later on the nature of human memory. But dealing with this and getting it out is good for me. Letting it go and moving on and being able to make room for new memories. Laying things to rest. Exorcising demons. Giving ghosts peace.